Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. In today's ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine, we're now going to have a look at the Russian keys to victory in the ongoing conflict. And as I talked about in the Ukrainian component in their keys of victory, again, this is kind of a sliding scale on what the Russian high command, the Russian political leadership, is eventually going to be able to articulate as a victory. And again, that's a sliding scale that could be, and I don't think it will be ultimately the seizing control of all of Donetsk and Luhansk, to include Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Severodonetsk, Lysychansk, and those locales, kind of where my cursor is currently hovering over. I think that would probably place the Russians in a more precarious situation in terms of having the ability to defend territorial gains. And Russia proper as well, giving the changing world after this current conflict. In all likelihood, the Russian goals and war aims right now are seizing all territory east of the Dnieper River, with also a contingency plan to eventually seize a land corridor to Moldova, and the possibility remains open for the Russians to seize Kyiv, along with other areas west of Kyiv as well. So sliding scale all the way from seizing Donetsk and Luhansk all the way to all-encompassing. So we don't know where that's going to take us at this moment. But right now, in terms of the overall keys to Russian victory, I would say right now is to maintain the current pressure campaign using long-range fires, tactical air assets, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles against the Ukrainian army in the field and its ability to continue the war. And ultimately, that could lead to the general collapse of the Ukrainian military and open up the possibility of massive Russian maneuver operations inside of Ukraine. If you look to the north of Kyiv, you see this greenish area in color. This was the area initially where the Russians had made its move towards Kyiv. Kind of really a multi-pronged operation that really didn't pan out well for the Russians. I would say that this operation, the northern operation, ended in failure for Russian forces, and at the same time may have really set back Russian operations in terms of being able to really achieve a final victory. It made it harder to do that with this very high-risk, high-reward operation that the Russians initiated in the direction towards Kyiv. Now, obviously, if it had worked in terms of the Ukrainian military not providing the kind of resistance that it did, and if the Russians had been able to occupy Kyiv and drive out the Zelensky government, then yes, you would have to say that it would have been a very, very, very large success, and things may look a little bit different right now, or a lot different right now. But that did not happen. Ultimately, the Russians did suffer a defeat north and west of Kyiv. I don't believe it was a diversionary operation. You do not cause that kind of expense in your force construct, in your actual military, on a diversionary operation. If this would have been a true diversionary operation, it probably would have looked like a lot like, for instance, the United States preparation for an amphibious landing operation along the beaches of Kuwait during the first Gulf War that never actually occurred. Obviously, Marines landing on the beaches in Kuwait, taking heavy casualties, and eventually possibly being driven from the beaches would not have been construed as a success. But deploying those Marines, drawing a great many of Iraqi army forces towards the Kuwaiti beaches, did create that diversionary concept that in its plan, operational art plan, that the United States was looking for. As in with, if it would have been a diversionary plan for operations in Belarus, meaning this buildup in Belarus that would have drawn Ukrainian forces towards the Belarusian border, and thereby causing some of these forces that were being deployed northwest and northeast of Kyiv not to be deployed in the east, then that would have been a successful diversionary operation. But the problem with that, the Russians went ahead and executed a operational plan to seize Kyiv. Look, Russian supporters, this was not a diversionary operation, what you're seeing right here in the north. It was a full-on operational plan designed to seize control of Kyiv, and it failed. It didn't work. Now, with that being said, the Russians are now adapting to the current war. They're taking a lot of data, a lot of information that has been obtained in the ongoing conflict, and they're taking this data, this information that has been assimilated, and they're now trying to figure out how to win this war with what they currently have outside of the scope of a mass national mobilization, which right now it looks like they look to avoid and continue more or less a regional mobilization that's taking place in areas such as Luhansk, Donetsk, and other areas throughout the Russian Federation outside of the scope of a national mobilization. But I can tell you that the losses that the Russians took, specifically northwest and northeast of Kyiv, really hurt the prospects for a much easier and comprehensive Russian victory than if they had not initiated said operation in the north. A lot of units have been damaged. A lot of these units reportedly, in some cases, aren't willing to be deployed. Now, in terms of taking those reports of some Russian units that are unwilling to be redeployed in combat zones, I would have to say take it with a grain of salt. That is not the entirety of what we are seeing within the Russian forces that are being deployed. Yes, obviously there are some Russian units that have been unwilling to relocate, redeploy, and go back into conflict. And there are many Russian units that are actively redeploying and are continuing to fight very honorably for the current Russian leadership. Now, did the Russians, in terms of taking casualties and the units being significantly damaged in the operations in the north, does that mean now the Russians are going to lose this war? And the answer to that is no, that's not the case. If we fast forward 1 year from now, I would have to anticipate that the Russian military is probably going to be much stronger and much larger than what you see in Russian forces today. I would have to believe that kind of going into this war, the Russian ground forces probably were around 300,000, with 280 to 300,000. The VDV, the airborne forces, 45 to 55 to 60,000. Naval infantry forces, 30,000, with coastal defense forces as well. National Guard going into this conflict, about 180,000 combat troops, total about 300,000 in total. Probably a year from now, we're looking at Russian ground forces that probably exceed 600,000, a National Guard force that probably is about the size that it is now, with the exception that I believe it'll probably have some heavy components to that National Guard as well. And then obviously the airborne forces will have to be reconstructed, given kind of some of the issues and challenges that faced Russian forces in northern Ukraine and southern Ukraine to some extent as well. But the current keys to victory for Russian forces are doing exactly what they're doing now, and that is shelling Ukrainian forces into oblivion with a variety of combat units, namely heavy artillery, long-range rocket fire, cruise missiles, tactical air assets. Probably this is what should have happened in the beginning stages of said conflict against Ukrainian forces. As opposed to launching this high-risk, high-reward operation, the Russians should have launched probably a 30 to 60 day air and limited ground campaign designed to damage the Ukrainian army in the field and just really sap the morale from Ukrainian forces. And that's exactly what Russian forces are doing right now. We have seen the pendulum move in terms of in the early stages of the conflict, the Russian forces taking a lot of casualties, especially in some of these large-scale maneuver operations that probably were not the most wisely executed. And I think the Russians really overestimated its capability and really underestimated Ukrainian capability in this area. But right now, if the Russians continue to prosecute the war under current conditions, with the Ukrainians taking more casualties than the Russians are right now, and in some cases quite a bit more casualties, considering the massive use of heavy artillery, long-range rocket fire, and air-based systems, tactical air assets. It's going to be difficult for the Ukrainians to continue to sustain the kind of casualties that they are taking now, and ultimately not see a break in the force, especially in certain areas of the conflict zone that could see a rapid Russian maneuver operations start to take place at some point. And especially, we're continuing to see Russian forces reconstitute themselves in areas, especially in the east, kind of in the southwest as well, in the direction of Zaporizhia and Kherson, and just the continued use of that heavy artillery capability against Ukrainian forces are the keys to Russian success in the continued war. And again, at a certain point, we're going to see that breaking point start to occur in the Ukrainian military. And again, that is the Russian goal right now in terms of how it is prosecuting this war. And that is right now what I would say is the keys to Russian victory. And then obviously would also be more of an expansion and mobilization of its forces, both in the theater of operations, but also in other areas of Russia as well. The Russians are going to have to effectively mobilize additional forces, increase the combat power and combat numbers of Russian ground forces, eventually probably getting up to that 600, 700,000 force construct to effectively continue to prosecute the war on the ground and achieve territorial gains, which will eventually happen through attrition against Ukrainian forces. But that's my take on it right now. Obviously, we're going to keep an eye on things, and we'll continue to have keys to victory and an analysis on either sides, both sides, in terms of what could be the outcome and what the outcome is the desired outcome for both opposing forces. Thanks for joining us. More to come very, very soon.